This is the whipped shea butter DIY you've been looking for. It's honestly almost too good to be true. It's creamy, but not greasy. It won't go grainy on you. It's a bit more resistant to temperature fluctuations than some formulations. It requires no heat to make, so it's a lot faster and easier to whip up than most body butters, and you'll only need 3 to 5 ingredients. I can't wait to show you how to make it. Let's get started. We'll kick off with a simple but essential first step. Get out your refined shea butter, scoop out a wee bit, and rub it between your fingers. Does it feel smooth? If so, we are good to go. Unfortunately, if it feels mealy or grainy, this isn't the formulation for that batch of shea butter. Since we aren't heating the butter to smooth it out, if it feels grainy now, it'll feel grainy in the finished formulation. Weigh out 32.5 grams of your smooth, refined shea butter. After that, there are just 2 other ingredients that form the bulk of this body butter. The first one softens the shea butter, making the overall formulation creamy and scoopable. You'll need 12.375 grams of a lightweight liquid oil, and feel free to round up to 12.8. I'm using sunflower seed oil, but there are tons of other options. Sweet almond oil, grapeseed oil, and safflower oil would all be good choices. Don't worry about this ingredient too much. The last major ingredient is why this formulation isn't greasy. It's a bit of a miracle ingredient and makes a huge difference in how this body butter feels on the skin, even though we're just using it at 10%. Weigh out 5 grams isopropyl myristate. This is an ester of isopropyl alcohol, also known as rubbing alcohol, and myristic acid, which is a fatty acid that naturally occurs in lots of fats, including coconut oil. Those 3 ingredients form the base of the formulation, but let's make it a bit more interesting with 2 more ingredients. Neither of these ingredients are essential to the formulation, so if you don't have them, you can replace them with more liquid oil. This first ingredient helps extend the shelf life of the body butter by delaying rancidity. It's not a preservative, but an antioxidant. You'll need 0.25 grams vitamin E. And the last ingredient is what makes the body butter smell lovely. I wanted a citrus theme for this formulation. I'm going to use a fragrance oil in this video, but there is a version that uses citrus essential oils in the free partner blog post, which is linked in the description box below. I was debating between 3 different citrusy fragrances: citrus mist from New Directions Aromatics, lemon slices from Rustic Essentials, and bergamot and clary sage from Marouge. So I ended up choosing Bergamot and Clary Sage, but feel free to choose any fragrance oil you like and weigh out 0.125 grams of it. Before we begin whipping, I like to pour the isopropyl myristate into the dish with the vitamin E and the fragrance to make sure we lose as little fragrance as possible. Now it's time to get whippy. Since we aren't melting the shea butter, it is essential that you whip this formulation properly, or it can be lumpy. Dump the shea butter into your whipping bowl. I recommend something fairly narrow with tall sides to prevent splattering. Grab your electric beaters. You'll want to use the ones that you would use to cream butter and sugar together when baking. I think it's technically possible to whip this by hand, but you'd have to be a lot stronger and more dedicated than I am. I wouldn't really recommend it. Begin by smashing up the shea butter a bit with the beaters and then start whipping. Whip for what seems like too long and then scrape the bowl down with your spatula and keep going. The whipping is the only thing that's turning the stiff shea butter into silky smoothness. So whip like the success of the formulation depends on it, because it does. If you are wondering about this new backdrop situation, it is a work in progress, part of a bigger studio revamp that I'm really excited about. I released a behind the scenes video tour for my exclusive video tier patrons back in February, so if you want to learn more, check that out. It's linked in the description box below. Once you've blended the ever-living daylights out of the shea butter and you can't see any clods or clumps, scrape down the bowl, add the isopropyl myristate mixture, and whip, whip, whip. When that's smooth, pour in the liquid oil and continue blending, scraping down the sides and beaters as you go to ensure the butter is evenly smooth and whippy. When it feels like you've been blending for far too long, you're probably done. Scoop out a wee bit of the butter and try it. If it's all smoothie smooth, it's packaging time. I'm using a 120 gram paperboard jar from Yellow Bee for mine. Make sure you don't pack the butter in and squish out all that air that we just so carefully whipped into it. For a bit of a citrusy color punch, I decided to sprinkle a wee bit of orange firecracker mica over the surface. This is totally optional, but I thought it was really pretty. Check on your butter the next day to make sure it is still soft and scoopable. If it is too soft or too hard, watch this video next. It will teach you why that happens and how to fix it. It also happens to be a great formulation to use grainy shea butter in. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and happy making.